Thank you, Jack. I appreciate the introduction, but more importantly, I appreciate all the work you've done for so many years to call attention to the fact that airports are powerful economic engines for their communities. We must do all we can to maximize the power of that engine. Mayor Hancock, it's great to be here with you today. As Angela mentioned already, Denver's had a long and enlightened history of leadership on issues such as transportation and aviation. And as Angela said, your community is a real example to us all. And in Kim Day, you have an airport leader with vision and passion and a proven ability to get things done. And her qualities, Kim's over there, her qualities were recognized by her peers this year, who honored her with the Airport Revenue News Airport Director of the Year Award. It's always great to be here with my good friend Angela Gittens, and you've seen why Angela is such a great leader for the world's airport community, and Angela's presentation showed just how dynamic this industry is in so many parts of the world. And it's great to be with so many dynamic airport and aviation leaders from across the country and around the world. The Airport Cities concept is all about recognizing the power of the airport economic engine. All of us know it's true. This year, ACl-North America set out to measure it through our Airport Economic Impact Study, the first done in 10 years, and the numbers are in. If Airports Incorporated was a single company in the United States, we'd be the nation's second largest employer, right behind Walmart. Airports are responsible, according to our, I heard a couple of wows out there, even you didn't know that. We have some education to do. Airports are responsible, according to our survey, for $1.2 trillion of economic activity in the US and 10.5 million jobs. We all know that the ability to deliver people and products to destinations and markets around the world is the economy's lifeblood. And beyond what we can measure, the status of the United States as a 21st century economic power would simply be impossible without aviation and airports. But we are in danger in this country of taking that for granted. Last year in Memphis, I said a few things in my opening speech that got some attention, as Jack's mentioned. I guess I caused a stir, and maybe that's why I was invited back. I said that the United States is underinvesting, massively underinvesting in its aviation future. I said that the United States government was standing in the way of that future, and that in taking that stand, the US government was working with airlines to limit investment. And at this point, I want to make one thing clear. I was not and am not bashing the airlines. I am not anti-airline, I'm pro-airline. I sincerely believe that moving to a modern system for financing infrastructure, such as what I outlined in last year's speech, would be good not only for our nation's communities and travelers, but for the airlines and their bottom lines. And that the current system, developed and institutionalized during the Nixon administration, is out of date. It's holding us back. But as I said last year, the airlines are still mired in an old theology, one that predates their own deregulation and are more concerned with controlling airports and limiting competition than serving their communities and looking to the future. And whether it's because politics in Washington is currently paralyzed, or because of significant airline campaign contributions, or because of an unwillingness to consider new ideas, the US government is right there beside them. And our communities, travelers, shippers, and I submit the aviation industry itself pays the price. The recently passed FAA authorization bill, enacted more than 4 years after its predecessor expired, further enshrines that old theology. It not only keeps the lid on airports, but reduces federal support for infrastructure investment without providing recourse to airports and their communities to take their growth plans into their own hands. In this approach, it combines the worst of the old world theology with a disregard for where the rest of the world, as Angela has just outlined for us, is going. Those comments last year got some attention. And what I found most interesting is that no one really much bothered, with one limited exception, denying an airline interest in controlling airports and limiting competition. In the past, what we might hear would be not so direct, but perhaps be cloaked in terms such as these. If you increase fees by even $1, fewer people will fly. And that's why we cannot let airports move to this modern system of passenger fees. Well, the whole move toward baggage and other ancillary fees sort of blew that one out of the water. So I heard next to nothing in response to the control and competition argument. Instead, what we've heard in this country is the following, and over again. First, that the U.S. market is mature and will not grow. Sometimes a modifier is added, that the market won't grow faster than GDP. Sometimes this modifier is not added. But the basic point from some of these folks is that we are done growing. Second, that it does not matter that other nations in Asia, the Middle East, Latin America, and elsewhere are building or modernizing facilities. They're just trying to build their own systems, the argument goes. We already have an air transport system. So therefore, we need no new capacity, and we need not worry ourselves that others will have newer, more modern, and effective facilities. Those are the arguments. Let me take them each in turn. The first assertion, that of a future of no growth, is a pessimistic hope combined with a lack of historical evidence and a disregard for demographic truth. The truth is that the United States is the only industrialized country in the world that is demographically dynamic right now. The truth, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, is that we will add 25 million more people to the population of the U.S. by the end of this decade, and more than 30 million in each of the following 3 decades. We will add the equivalent of the population of Japan in the next few decades, as if that will make no difference. This argument disregards the possibility of an improving economy. It also disregards the development of new industries and new opportunities. It disregards the possibility that the U.S. role as a hub of global commerce will increase or even stay level. It disregards the truth that you must plan and build infrastructure in advance, that you can't just go to some infrastructure shelf and put it into place overnight if somehow you discover you need it. Finally, it disregards the fact that we now live in a global economy, that businesses, manufacturers, and employers can place their operations nearly anywhere in the world they choose, and that modern transportation infrastructure attracts business, while decaying infrastructure repels it. American airports should make this country a magnet for global business, not deter it. This argument is a bet against the future, a bet that disregards all the evidence. About the best you can say about this is that if we make this bet against a future of growth, we can be virtually assured it will happen, and that the rest of the world will leave us further behind. That brings me to my second point. Some say it does not matter if others build modern new facilities. It does not matter if they modernize old ones. They are simply trying to create what we in the United States already have. I say that argument flies in the face of history, and it flies in the face of our competitors' ambitions. To me, it sounds like the American steel and auto industries in the post-World War II era. As others were building new, more modern steel plants and auto factories, U.S. industry stood still, complacent in its dominance, and certain its future was assured. A decade or so later, those industries were all over Capitol Hill and federal agencies, begging for protection against foreign competition. A more self-destructive scenario is hard to imagine. My fear is that this argument sets U.S. aviation up for the same outcome. And in a global industry like ours, that's a suicide note. Indeed, we're already seeing this today. Airlines are all over Capitol Hill right now, trying to prevent export-import bank financing for sales of U.S.-produced aircraft to non-U.S. airlines. A battle royal is underway. The aviation industry is already feeding on itself. The future, as a famous former football coach once said, is now, and it's a sad one. Now, I'm not commenting on the merits of export assistance for aircraft, what the U.S. does for Boeing or the EU does for Airbus, I don't know. But this is not the future we want, an industry whose only available strategy for growth is protectionism. But that is what happens when you do not invest in tomorrow. And as of right now, led by the airline industry with the full cooperation of the U.S. government, that's the direction we're headed. I hope we can change this. Over the next 3 years, we're prepared to work with airlines and others to construct a new modern system to build and upgrade infrastructure. A system that gives airports and their communities the ability they need to invest in modern infrastructure. A system that permits our air transportation system and the companies within it to flourish. A system that positions our nation as a key linchpin in the global economy throughout the 21st century and beyond. In short, we're talking about the need for a comprehensive aviation policy that addresses the needs of airlines, aviation infrastructure, and airports. I remember as a young Capitol Hill staffer in the 70s and 80s, seeing executives from auto and steel companies I'd admired growing up, coming through our offices, begging for protection as a way to survive. I do not want to see aviation executives doing the same thing. This is a pro-aviation speech, not an anti-airline one. All of us, airlines, airports, communities, need to move beyond the theology of the past and build a future of growth and prosperity. ACl-North America has documented more than $80 billion of new infrastructure projects, runways, terminals, and other facilities that are needed by 2015 to meet projected growth in passenger travel and other activity through the 2020s, based on the long lead times needed for airport improvements. Planning, permitting, and construction can take 5 to 8 years for a terminal and more than 10 years for a runway. Betting against growth and airport modernization could be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we don't invest, we know what the future holds: an absence of growth and protectionist complaints about competition. While those of you from elsewhere are building the airport cities of the future, we here in America will be consigning ourselves to an economic backwater. If we do invest in airport infrastructure, there are no guarantees, never are, but we have a chance to build a competitive future for a competitive nation. And we do know that having a vibrant and efficient airport is essential when trying to attract new businesses and operations to America's communities. Not to mention that these infrastructure projects could provide over 2 million jobs in the process. Now, as I said before, when I finished speaking last year, I was immediately invited back to this year's meeting. I'd hoped for a more upbeat speech this time. I regret that didn't come to pass. For now, while airports and communities all over the United States are looking to the future, our airlines and government are stuck in the past. But I'm hopeful, and I remain convinced that all of us in the aviation industry can ultimately come together to chart a better future.